From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Man, am I still pretty? And he's like, you ain't pretty, but you're going to be all right.
And now I'm just hanging on, looking at the wall, like flying this way. And I'm like, oh man, I got to let go of this thing at some point.
And then there's one that could literally pick you up.
Yeah.
It's
I'm not really sure about that, but yeah.
That's called a helicopter.
Well,
And the last lap was just chaos. I mean, like 4 wide, 5 wide.
It's like whatever, if you land it and send it into the fence, you're probably not gonna get hurt. Bounce, and then this insane roll, the car that Keegan was in. I mean, I don't know it's the shape of the Beetle or what, but that thing sent it.
So I was the supercharger specialist on my old man's car with
Specialist?
Yeah, it sounds cooler than crew guy.
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Christy Lee.
I'm Alexander Rossi.
I'm Cruz Pedregon.
Hi, I'm John Montecalvo, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. This is the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. We're in Speedway, Indiana, just down the street from that famous place known as Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Ken Stout. That's Rico Elmore. The track dude has joined us, as always, at the controls. And we have a close friend, a longtime friend, and an extremely talented race car driver that will join us here via video from Long Island. We welcome Mr. John Montecalvo, a 3-time Mountain Motor ProStock world champ. He certainly knows how to get it done, and just won what is arguably the largest Mountain Motor ProStock race that's ever come along. I mean, it was loaded with the best of the best, and he put that thing on top of the box there a little bit earlier on in the season. But we welcome you, my friend. It's I told you this on the phone. We haven't had anybody from ProStock yet on this show, and I've thought of you 100 times, and it's just been getting together, I guess, and trying to work the schedules out. And I know, by the way, you were just on vacation, so I hope you're refreshed.
Yeah, we've been trying to take some time off the summer. Actually, we haven't raced in probably 3 or 4 weeks now. But summer's short on Long Island, trying to get some boating in. But come September, we're back at it full force again.
Super cool, man. I'm glad you're here with us. I know Lois Ann is there as well, your wife, who's been with you all along the way. He owns a corporation out there, a company called John T. Montecalvo, the asphalt company, and it is a hotbed of drag racers out there on the island. John Nobile certainly is one of those that comes to mind that I know is a longtime friend of yours and was really kind of instrumental in you getting going.
Positively. John started a little bit before me, and he was quite successful at what he was doing. We were all racing at the local track here, basically grudge racing every weekend. It was John, his cousin John Placino, and a bunch of other guys. And John stepped it up and became a ProStock driver, and we followed, not too far behind him.
I was always curious, because he has a trucking company, I believe dump trucks, if I'm not mistaken. You have the asphalt company. Do you guys ever work together, or have you worked together?
We worked together for a long time. John had like 8 trucks at one time, hauling aggregate for me every day of the week. We worked together for probably a good 15, 20 years. But he's kind of backed it down as far as the trucking goes, and I've slowed down the manufacturing a little bit also. So we're not working together now, but we've definitely had a good relationship going there with the trucking, with the business, with the racing, and we're still very good friends.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I guess I just always assumed that was the relationship, but I never actually asked the question, and I didn't know if you worked together in business or not. But yeah, 2 very talented guys, 2 vicious competitors there in the category. And as I read about that, when he decided to go, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were thinking about running NHRA Comp, which a complex class, very, very competitive. But man, you can have a really good race car one day and then have a car that's totally not even legal the next day. So when somebody hits the index, It's like, okay, what do I do with this thing now? You know?
Yeah, we were always into the heads up stuff, and actually, who convinced me was Scott Shafroff, another local legend here. I was going to run comp, you're right. And I talked to Scott, and Scott's like, well, IHRA's got this mountain motor thing. Why don't we give that a try? He built my first engine. We went to Bristol with it, qualified number 8, first race I went to with him. And from there on in, it was IHRA, then it was ADRL, PDRA. Now we're doing some NHRA stuff with the mountain motor cars. So it was a good move. Scott had the right idea. Let's run heads up. Let's get treated like a pro. And hey, I've been happy doing it. It's been a long career, and not ready to give it up yet.
So talk to me about even earlier than that. You were talking about the grudge racing that was going on out on the island. And, of course, my career started off in Englishtown. So I remember those boys coming out there to Englishtown, and they had some pretty big piles of cash there that you never saw time come up on the board, but the cash was changing hands. So it was a vicious business out there with some of the absolute biggest players in the industry. But talk to me about your early days and how you got the bug and how it all began in terms of racing.
I could tell you about one race at Englishtown that I wasn't in, Mike Castellano was in, and there was a bunch of guys from down south came up. And I think Bob Fry was announcing. I'm not sure who was announcing, but anyway, they announced there was more money on that race than there was at the Big Boat Shootout. So that's the type of stuff that we did back then. It was pretty wild. There was bags of money floating around, I can tell you that. But we did it more on we ran, of course, we saw you at Englishtown quite a few times. We used to do a lot of Wednesday night stuff there. Actually, most of our grudge racing was done out here at West Hampton, the local track. But it was so competitive that I can remember getting up early Sunday morning, going to Englishtown, make one run with my car just as a checkout pass, and hurry up back here, which is a good 3.5 hours, to run at the local track, West Hampton, 20 minutes away. Because I had a grudge race, whether it be John Nobile, John Placino. Back then, we were adversaries. We were going at it every weekend. And it was a matter of who could fool who, more or less.
Oh, my God. Man, that is serious. I drove, I had a small trucking company. I drove to the island all the time, so I know exactly how far that distance is you're talking about. So you would literally get up early Sunday morning, go all the way to Englishtown, that has to be the better part of 2 hours one way with no traffic, and then unload the car, make one run, a shakedown run, make sure everything's okay, load it all back up, drive another 2 hours back. Now you've got traffic, by the way, and then get ready for a race that evening. And that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, that's what we did, and it was like musical motors. You never knew who had whose engine. John had a couple of good engines, and we never knew if it was going to be in Pacino's car or where it was going to be. So, of course, the hoods never came off, hidden bottles, you name it. Every trick in the book was done. I can remember one time that I was running Placino. He had a Nova, and this thing pulled the wheels up, and the front wheels started shaking like a funny car. Well, he kicked my rear end that day, I got to say. And he told me later on that they had cut, like John Nobile just took a torch to the car and cut like 150 pounds out of it. I don't even know how the front wheels stood on the car, but I could say all I saw was his front wheels. He was gone. So I lost a few dollars that day. I couldn't let him know that, because the next week I probably would have my motor back in and him and I would be gambling against one another again.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Fatheads Eyewear Studios. We're talking to John Montecalvo, who is out in Cinema Ridge's Long Island, three-time Mountain Motor ProStock champ. And we were just talking about some of the street racing that went on. This is back in the day. Put a time frame on this. Are we talking about the 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, you're talking about late 80s, early 90s, in that vicinity. And obviously it was a hotbed of, grudge racing out here. I think we did more grudge racing than anything else. I tried running super gas for a while, but that just didn't excite me as much as the grudge racing. And I got to say, even today, we'll put $10 on reaction time or $100 on ET. We'll play around a little between Elijah, myself, Pacino's. Takes me back to my roots. It's still fun.
So when you said the guys were swapping engines, help me out with this. Let's just say Placino has Nobile's engine in it. So is Nobile going to get a little cut of that if Placino wins?
Oh, positively. And I'll tell you another story. One time, John had an engine that he wanted me to try. We were enemies. So for some reason, we decided to team up, right? And he loans me an engine. Well, I make a run, and John, you know how excitable he is. How did it go? How did it go? How did it go? I had to lie. I had to tell him it was faster than what it actually was because my motor was faster than his. I couldn't let him know that because the next week I probably would have my motor back in and him and I would be gambling against one another again.
That's pretty cool, man. That's funny. So I can't let him know that my engine's actually better than his engine. So what type of car were you running back in the day? What was your grudge match car?
I had an Alston Camaro, an 81 Camaro. I had a 67 Camaro before that we used to play a little game, because everybody was in the stands with stopwatches, of course. So we made believe we had nitrous on the car. I would purge the bottle was in the car. And when it came time to run, I'd say, well, we really don't want to run with the bottle this weekend. We really want to run just heads up, motor to motor. So, of course, they had my time when they thought I was running the bottle, which was probably a good second faster than what we could actually run. And we'd go out without the bottle and take some money home.
So everybody would bet on you like you had the bottle.
Exactly. Well, they deduct the second and say, all right, well, this guy's going to run, he's going to run probably about 950 when, without the bottle. He's probably running 850 with it. But we, like I said, we played every game in the book. It was hidden bottles. It was all kinds of things. It was trap doors on the oil pan so they could get better rollout and not red light, and you name it, every trick in the book.
Wow.
So
I hope my PRA tech guy's not listening right now.
Yeah. You guys probably taught them a thing or two along the way. When you watch a show like the what is that thing called from the Tulsa, not Tulsa
Street Outlaws.
Yeah, the Street Outlaws. When you saw that show become popular, were you looking at that kind of chuckling saying, we did that stuff 20 years ago?
John and I and John Placino, we always have that conversation. We were 30 years too early. All he had to do was come out here to West Hampton. He would have had the best reality show that he could imagine, especially with John.
How have things changed since those early days when you guys were doing all those grudge heats? Do you still have a little bit of that flavor, a little bit of that flair still going on today?
We do. We talk a little bit of trash in the pits, especially Elijah Martin and myself. We're always going at it. Johnny Pacino, he actually, I don't know, we bet on reaction time one time, I think $1 or $2. And I beat him, and he signed the bill and said, keep this, you're going to need it later. The whole deal. We still do a lot of trash talking. It might be ProStock, but we keep the fun factor in it. It's probably one of the most serious classes out there. I've never driven anything else, but the people that have tell me it's the hardest car to drive. But again, it's all about the fun factor. It's all about having a good time. So we'll definitely trash talk a little in the staging lanes.
He's a seasoned veteran for sure, and has been talking a little trash himself. I mean, he's not afraid to throw it down with the big boys. We've got John Montecalvo on the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'm going to go to every trailer here, and I'm going to raise the price by $1,000 at every trailer I go to. And sooner or later, somebody's going to sell me an engine. Then I am going to bring it to Scott Shafroff, and we are going to copy it. So why don't you just sell me an engine?
Welcome back to The Skinny. We have John Montecalvo on the show with us here today, talking about how he got started in this industry of his that he's been so successful at. Of course, a very successful businessman, as he is a racer, and some of the characters that he lives close to and raced with his entire career out there on Long Island with him. As we go back and talk about the start of your career in the early to mid-'90s, and Scott Shafroff, I'm curious what the conversation was. Why mountain motor ProStock instead of 500-inch ProStock?
500-inch ProStock has always been, I wouldn't say out of reach, because we certainly are capable of doing it. It's just something I never had any desire to do. Always wanted, the mountain motor cars were always faster, always liked the way they sounded. And it definitely was more feasible, money-wise, to run the mountain motor cars. Plus, they didn't run as many events as the NHRE cars do. And I didn't want to do that neither. I want to have a life and a business, et cetera, et cetera. So the mountain motor cars basically were a good fit for me. And back in the day, I mean, IHRA probably had, I don't know, 30 plus of them showing up. So it was very, very competitive. And like I said, I always wanted to go faster. And the mountain motor cars obviously were substantially faster back then when I started, and they still are today.
Yeah, they monster engines. I should have read up a little bit more. I know that Ted Jones, I believe in 1976, came up with the idea. He was vice president of IHRA at the time. Larry Carrier was president, but it was Ted Jones that came up with the idea of, hey man, instead of running 500-inch cars where there's a weight per cubic inch rule and it gets a little more complicated, how about we just tell the guys, run what you brung. Go build a big as motor as you want, bring it out here, and throw it down, and we'll let you guys go. And 1977, the class was born, and you were in it, obviously, a little bit later on. Eventually, I think it did come up with an 800-inch rule, and maybe there was a little bit of room there for boring or cleaning up the cylinder walls. But it ended up about 800 inches or 820 inches, right?
Yeah, we're at 830 right now. With the Hemi head motors, the Fords and the GMs. There's also a wedge car out there. Dwayne Rice has got a wedge. He's allowed a little bit more cubic inch. I think he's allowed up to 845, and he's pretty competitive with that also. But yeah, we're in the 830 inch range right now.
So when you speak of that wedge, that takes you back to your career, right? You were battling all those Fords with the Hemi heads back in the day, and you were using a Chevy.
Yeah, it was. We did all right back then, but it got to a point where the Fords were a little bit faster than us, and obviously they had the Hemi head. Sonny was my guy, for a long time, and Sonny kept telling me, if we only had a Hemi head, I said, well, why can't we get one approved? Oh, they'll never approve it. So basically, I got together with Mike Baker. He was the head of tech at IHRA. Calvin Neighbors was one of our engine builders. John Kazi, of course, and Sonny. And we met in my trailer. And basically it came down to either we're going to have an all Ford show or we're going to allow a Hemi head Chevy to be built. So they all agreed that that's what we needed to do. And Sonny got to work. And boy, I'll tell you what, he did a phenomenal job. The very first race we went to was at Virginia with my car. It was the first Hemi he ever built. And prior to that, the wedge motors were falling behind a little bit. In the quarter mile, we were probably, 3 miles an hour off from the Fords. Well, we went out first run and set top speed of the meet. So, and that really set the stage. I mean, other than Dwayne Rice, there's not another wedge head motor out there. Everything else is Hemis right now.
When did you make the move from Scott Shafroff to Sonny?
Well, that's a funny story also. Sonny wouldn't sell me an engine. I tried to buy one. Scott was building good stuff, but the Sonny stuff was, top of the pack. You had Harold Denton out there, my good buddy, Carlton Phillips. There was a lot of cars out there. Billy Huff, Doug Kirk, all running the Sonny stuff, and they were top 8, top 10 players. Sonny probably had 12 motors out there at one time. So I wanted to buy Sonny's engine. He wouldn't sell it to me. So you're going to take my engine, you're going to bring the Shafroff, and you're going to copy it. So basically what happened is that I told him, look, Sonny, I'm going to go to every trailer here, and I'm going to raise the price by $1,000 at every trailer I go to. And sooner or later, somebody's going to sell me an engine. Then I am going to bring it to Scott Shafroff, and we are going to copy it. So why don't you just sell me an engine? Well, he kind of hemmed and hawed. And then finally, Sheriff Huff, Billy Huff's dad, came over to me and said, look, I don't care. He said, I'm going to sell you an engine. It's my engine. It's not Sonny's. And then Carlton Phillips said, Sonny, why don't you sell him an engine? There's a yard sale down the road. There's eight of your engines sitting in front of the guy's lawn. They're all over the place. So Sonny gave the blessings to Huff to sell me an engine, and the rest is history. I mean, I was with Sonny for 25 years. May God bless his soul. Great guy. And, we won a lot of races together, and I really, really miss him. But, he wouldn't sell me an engine in the beginning. I think in the end, well, there's no thinking. Definitely, I ended up being the most longest loyal customer that he ever had. I never switched. It was Sonny all the way for a continuous 25 years.
We'll take a quick break here. Of course, he's referring to the longtime engine builder that he had he was a house car for Sonny Leonard. We'll touch on that when we come back.
There's probably 1,000 things we could change and 999 that we could get wrong.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We're in Speedway, Indiana, but our current guest is located out in Long Island, Center Moriches. His name's John Montecalvo and runs the asphalt company out there called John T. Montecalvo. He's been in business for a long, long time, but he's also been drag racing for a long, long time. And it took you a while, my friend, to finally win that championship. We'll focus on that in just a couple of moments. But I teased everybody when we were going to break about Sonny Leonard. And yeah, unfortunately, we lost Sonny here just recently, January 10th, I believe it was, 2021. He got pneumonia, 77 years old. He was in great shape. I think it was, at least it was a shock to me. Didn't know that he was even ill at the time, but I anticipated him being around for a long time. But you got hooked up with him at some point in time, I'm guessing in the 90s there, when you finally went to the mountain motor stuff and spent, as you just said, 25 years with that man, and you were a house car for him. It's so funny hearing that story that he didn't want to send you an engine, because the only relationship that I ever knew of you and Sonny were, I mean, you two were peas in a pod, man. You guys were in business together. So talk to me about that relationship and how it all developed and how the engines grew. He was a brilliant man. And I just want to clear up for the fans. You mentioned John Causey a couple times. John Causey was a competitor that builds engines to this day, one of the best of all time. But he was building the Fords, and Sonny was building the Chevy. And then, as you mentioned, finally got access through the rule book to the Hemi head, and then he went right after John.
Oh yeah, I mean they right up until the end they were good buddies. They played golf together, but just like us with the racing, we've gone on vacation with Elijah and Violet. We're all friends until it comes down to that first round, second round, third round, fourth round, and we're not friends anymore. But Sonny and Causey had a great relationship through the years. Much respect for both of them, and it's just a matter of. Right now, I don't know if you're even aware, but I'm with Causey now. I'm a Causey customer, and he reminds me so much of Sonny. Sonny was the most honest guy you ever want to meet. If he told you had 15 more horsepower, you had 15 more horsepower. I never even got dyno sheets from him. Basically, my ET slip was my dyno. And like I said, he was brilliant. It's unbelievable some of the things that he came up with, things that I had no idea that we should try. And we certainly tried a lot. Like you said, I was pretty much the house car at that time. And I think of him so often, but the way I think of Sonny is not as my engine builder, but as my friend. Sonny was a great friend to me, and I still stay in touch with Frances, his wife, Kelly, his daughter. Just really good people.
Yeah, well, man, it was just a shame to hear that he had passed away. So talk to me about how that relationship worked, and maybe even with John Causey now. So would you leave the car down there, or would you guys take the engine out, give it to Sonny? He would take it down to his shop there in the Carolinas, and then you would take the car home and prep the car. How did that relationship work?
Yeah, most of the time, Sonny was at every race, and most of the time he had his pickup truck there. And if the engine needed work, or if we wanted to try something, we'd pull the engine out, give it back to him. And at the next race, he'd bring it back to us. It was very, very convenient. And Sonny always had something up his sleeve. He always wanted to try something, whether it be another cam or carburetors or whatever else that he had cooking at the time. So, he had carte blanche for my engines. I trusted Sonny 300% that whatever he was going to do, it was going to pick up. And 90% of the time it did. Like I said, he was brilliant, and he wasn't afraid to try things. That's for sure.
So much technology that just continued to work its way into that sport, and especially in the engine building department. It was always amazing. As you talked about before, man, whenever you hear those things start up, it's just a low grunt, rumble. Talk about grunt motors, stump pullers, just massive torque. And, of course, finding a way to harness all that through the first couple of gears has to be quite a chore.
Oh, it does. There's no doubt about it. The main thing with us is, tuning the car. We've got so much initial power that sometimes we have to take power away. And it's a matter of gear ratio. It's a matter of tires. Different conditions, require different things. We just came back from Denver about 3 weeks ago. We had never been there, and that was a totally different setup for us. Different size tire, different gear ratio, different rear gear, different jetting. So that one kind of threw us for a loop. But it's constant. From run to run, we're changing the car. There's probably 1,000 things we could change, and 999 that we could get wrong.
Want to get the skinny on other guests and different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
We have John Montecalvo on the show with us here today. Thanks for watching The Skinny. Some great stories coming out of this guy. He's been doing it since the 90s, and not much he hasn't seen. Plenty of starting line antics all along the way, but an absolute true driver when it comes to driving a Mountain Motor ProStock car. Not near the downforce you get out of the funny cars or the top fuel cars, and consequently those things become quite a handful to drive at speed, for sure, in excess of 200 miles per hour for sure. So, man, it took you a little while to get there, but you guys kept scrapping and scrapping and scrapping. Certainly one of the best. Everybody knew it. Anytime you showed up, you could win, but you just could not secure that championship. Finally, in 2009, as it turns out, the last year for the class with IHRA, and you finally get that coveted championship. And ironically enough, nobody can take it away from you now, the last one of the IHRA series.
Actually, Ken, they did have a revival. I think it was like 2014, 2015, but it wasn't the old IHRA. It was like maybe 6 ProStock cars showing up, and it really wasn't nowhere near competitive. So there is other champions after me, but I don't know. To me, it just didn't have the credibility as we did back in '09 when it was the true last championship, when we had 25 cars showing up battling it out there. But that was definitely one of the highlights of my career. Like you said, I've chased it for a long time. We've got close. I mean, we were 2 a couple times. We were 3. We were in the top 5 consistently, but I just never could put it together until 2009 when we won it. 2004 was a good year. We battled John Nobile right to the end on that one. So back then, like I said, you had 25 cars showing up, and man, I'll tell you, it was tough. So to win it was definitely a weight taken off my shoulders. I know people that didn't win it, that came in second, came in third, and man, they still talk about it. Like, we really, we screwed up here, or we screwed up there, or we shouldn't have changed tires, and we would have had our championship. But, it was a big deal back then, winning the IHRA championship. It was very prestigious at the time.
John, we were talking earlier a little bit off air about the ADRL. I know that it's coming back. Tell me about then and now. What's your thoughts?
Well, back in the day, there's no doubt the ADRL was the place to race for us. The fans, I remember the first one I went to, Robert Patrick, I think he went to the race before me. And we went to, I think the first one was Maryland. Robert said, get whatever you need to get before you get in the track. Get your groceries, get your water, get whatever you need, because once you leave the track, you're not getting back in. It was just lines for miles long to get in. It was probably one of the most exciting periods in drag racing. And I think drag racing at that time owed Kenny Nowlin, because Kenny brought in new people. It was the free entry deal, $20 a carload. But he brought in people that had never been to a drag race before that became future fans. They might have went to NHRA national events after that. They might have got hooked. So Kenny definitely did a good job for drag racing back then. Obviously, fell upon hard times, and he's trying to bring it back now. I don't know how that's going to go. I think, in my opinion, if he was smart, he'd probably run a couple big events a year, like Wes's race down in Bradenton, and not try to have a series, because as it stands now, at least in our class anyway, we've got NHRA, we've got PDRA. PDRA we're very happy with. We're very excited about NHRA, and there's a lot of stuff on the horizon that I can't really talk about now. But I think next year our class in NHRA is going to be a pretty good deal also. So I'm not really sure where ADRL fits in now. I'm just thankful that I got to run during the highlight of it. And I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I know there's a race coming up in Rockingham. I'm not even sure if Mount Motor ProStock is going to be included. But, for his sake, I hope that he can come back and, let's use the term, redeem himself, because he certainly had a few hard years and a lot of different stories as to how that happened. And I don't really know, the particulars. But all I know is that back then, it was the place to be. I mean, you could do a burnout. You could hear people stamping their feet in the stands. It was absolutely incredible.
What you said about there's a story there, but the truth is somewhere in between. And, none of us know that. And, we got one person that can judge us, and it isn't anybody here. So, it's Kenny's a great guy, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do. But I wanted your opinion on that, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I have, like I said, we had great times back there with Kenny, and I think drag racing definitely owed him, for the new spectators that he brought in. Everybody's saying, well, it's only $20 a car, it's free, and they're not real spectators. I disagree with that. Most of the people by the second or third race were very knowledgeable, and I'm sure they went on to witness some NHRA events and whatever else. And, it just... it's a sad story that it had to end, but all good things come to an end. And I know Kenny's trying his hardest to bring it back again. Hopefully he can get it back to that level. We got into a situation one time where Elijah didn't want to even start his car. So I had to wait to start mine. Then he didn't want to do his burnout.
You're taking a look there at John Montecalvo coming to us from his home there in Cinema Riches, Long Island, New York, and a couple of pretty cool trophies located back there behind him, championship trophies, and we talked about the 2009 IHRA Championship in the Mountain Motor Pro Stock category, and then 2010 you doubled right back up. You were just talking about the ADRL and the Extreme Pro Stock champ there that you became. It was a massive following there that he ended up creating, as you talked about, documented, everybody coming into the track. What I loved about it was the format, and I know you had to decide at one point what you were going to do, and I think it was actually 2009, if I'm not mistaken, where you had to decide if you were to run IHRA or ADRL, and you thought to yourself, you know what, we had a couple of conflicts here. I might be able to pull off running both of them. And you were actually going to try and run both in one weekend because the ADRL, as you know, Rico, would show up. You guys would qualify, I guess practice, qualify, and race all in one day. And then, boom, you would take off. You could take off and really race on a Sunday if the events were close. But for IHRA, they would qualify on Friday, Saturday, and then race on Sunday. So you actually did have an opportunity to try and pull that off.
We did. I mean, with IHRA, we could qualify on Friday and get in pretty deep in the field and not need to be back there until Sunday. With our fingers crossed, of course, that we didn't get bumped back out. And ADRL, we could get there, make a run on Saturday because he had one qualifier on Saturday and then go right into eliminations. But I think at that point we were number one in IHRA, and I think we were number two in ADRL. So we really had to make a choice because there was a couple races that were going to be a conflict at the end of the season. And we decided to stick with, in 2009, stick with IHRA. Thankfully, we won the championship there. Came back in 2010 and we got our ADRL championship. So we accomplished both. It would have been nice to win them both the same year, but that was probably an impossibility, like I said, because there was some races that are on top of one another towards the end of the season. But it was good to win the two back-to-back, I got to say.
So So talk to us about those trophies back behind you. Feel free to turn around here if you need to. No, not a worry. But we see some pretty impressive trophies back behind you. It looks like the PDRA championship that you also had the opportunity to win in 2019 back there behind you.
Yeah, after the ADRL demise, I'll say, we started running with PDRA. I got to thank Tommy and Judy for having us over there, and my goal was to win a championship in every series that I ever raced, and I did that in 2019. It was a great year with PDRA. And same situation, it's pretty tough over there. I think at that time we probably had consistently 15, 16 cars showing up. Sometimes it was only an 8-car field. But to win the championship over there pretty much was the icing on the cake. So now I've got my 3, and there's only one left. That's over at NHRA.
And hopefully that comes together here for you. I know good strides are going that way. Hey, man, I want to run a couple of names past you and just get your response. We've already heard you talk about a couple of them, but John Nobile, John Placino, Roy Hill, Ronnie Sox, Gene Wilson, Pete Berner, Elijah Morton, Tony Gillig. Who jumps out at you when you hear those names? Who has it been that has been your vicious competitor all along the way?
Oh, I'd have to say Elijah, because we just have a lot of fun together. When Elijah and I pull up to the starting line, we don't know what's going to happen. We got into a situation one time where Elijah didn't want to even start his car. So I had to wait to start mine. Then he didn't want to do his burnout. Then nobody wanted to put the first bulb on. So every time Elijah and I go to the starting line is a battle, and it's all in good fun. We hug one another up on top end, no matter who wins, who loses. We're still buddies, and we'll always be buddies. But right now, the guy that's on fire is Tony Gillig. I mean, he's the guy to beat right now, in my opinion. He's got a really strong car. Ken, you probably remember back when his brother-in-law, Billy Wagner, was my crew chief. So they've got a good team over there. Bob is actually my crew chief for a couple of years, too. So Tony's, he's killer on the tree, and he's got a fast car right now. So as far as who's probably the one to beat right now, in my opinion, it's Tony Gillig. But, we've got 5 or 6 good cars out there right now, that's for sure. And out of the whole field, we probably got 12 that could win at any given time.
Yeah, super cool stuff. I know there's been some great battles. We'll touch on some of the starting line games whenever we come back here. He has no shortage of stories about those. Stay with us.
Yeah, getting back to Sonny. If Sonny was probably up above saying, "What in the world are you doing in that raggedy ass Ford?" Because that's exactly.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. John Montecalvo on the show with us, and man, a lot of great stories here from this veteran mountain motor drag racer. Hey man, a special day here. 2022, February 6th, you sell your race car because you thought you were done? Were you done at that moment whenever you watched that favorite vehicle of yours drive away?
I got to say, Ken, I actually teared up a little bit. I couldn't let everybody see that, of course. I had to go back in the shop and watch the car drive down the road to Pennsylvania to its new home. But after about a week or so, I said, well, this isn't too bad. Of course, it was winter, so I was still snowmobiling and having a good time, so I didn't have to worry about all my buddies were racing and I wasn't. But that lasted about 2 weeks. And then I got a call from Roy that he had a car for sale, and what can we do? And here I am back at it again, So like I said, that was, it felt good for 2 weeks that, okay, that burden's gone. I don't have to do this stuff anymore. I did everything that I wanted to do in the class. Nothing left to prove. But Roy made me a deal that was kind of typical Roy, kind of hard to refuse. And, here I am with a Mustang of all things.
So that is phase 2 of this quick little story here in this final segment of the show. John Causey powered Ford, and you know Sonny rolled over, right? You know he rolled over in his grave whenever you did that. But Roy Hill, and you went to the Roy Hill drag racing school, and Roy Hill, we all know and love Roy Hill. I mean, there will never be another one like him, and it's fabulous that he's back out there. I heard, I was actually watching you in his car, but you strike a deal with that crazy individual there and love him to death. But yeah, man, I mean, that was a big turn. So 2 weeks later, you decide to buy a Kazi-powered Ford from Roy Hill.
Yeah, getting back to Sonny, if Sonny was probably up above saying, "What in the world are you doing in that raggedy ass Ford?" Because that's exactly what Sonny would say. And it was an opportunity that Roy gave me. You know, we kind of worked the deal out where he was going to sponsor the car, and he still is. His name's still on the car, and it was a very attractive deal for me. And with it came John Kazi. You know, and one thing with me is that I'm loyal. Like, I would never take a Sonny's engine to Kazi. I would never take a Kazi engine to Sonny. So, and they all know that. You know, I think they know my level of integrity, that I don't play games like that. So it came with a Kazi motor, and I'm a Kazi customer now. And I'm happy over there. You know, John, like I said, reminds me so much of Sonny. He's just a good, honest guy. If he tells you got 10 more horsepower, that's what you have. Nobody works harder than him, the same as Sonny. Sonny just worked overtime. I think he could be playing golf, and he was thinking about what else he could do on a mountain motor. But I'm very content over there. You know, Kazi's done a good job. I think we've got some pretty good power. So here I am in a Ford.
Yeah, Jerry Haas built car. I mean, second to none. Wonderful guy there as well. Certainly the best of the best. Talk to me about going to Roy Hill's drag racing school. I read in here, he taught me years ago things that I still use today, like putting your right belt on first and then your left belt. Explain that to me. Why would that even matter?
Roy's theory is to make everything routine so you don't have to think. And it's a great theory. I agree with it 300%. You know, you get in the car, you do the same thing every time. And to me, it just relaxes you. You're not worried that you forgot to do something because it's your routine. And Roy was really, really big on that. He still is today. Actually, I took my grandson down there about a month ago to run a junior dragster. So he's still big on the routine. It was pretty exciting going to his class because there was a couple people that didn't make it. They decided to leave. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was.
He's a funny dude when you're
45 minutes.
Yeah, he's a funny cat when you're around him at the racetrack a little bit. When you go to that school, man, the gloves come off, right? It's tough love.
Oh, he's a drill sergeant, and you know, he wants to see if you've got it or not. You know, if you don't have it, you're wasting your time there. So I remember in particular, we were at Rockingham. It was like 95 degrees out. He'd get you suited up, and I'm sitting in the car for like 25 minutes roasting. But you know what? It wasn't going to intimidate me. I wasn't going to let Roy intimidate me. I wasn't going to let the weather intimidate me. I work with asphalt. That's 300 degrees. So really sitting in the car with the fire suit on didn't bother me. But he sends me out with this car that had probably 75 runs on the tires and said, "I want you to get it from point A to point B." I'm thinking, it's not my car. That's what he wants me to do. That's what I'm going to do. So, of course, I went down the track sideways all the way down. He was a little excited when he came to get me, like, "What the hell were you thinking?" I did what he told me to do. So from then on, him and I had a good relationship. We had a good understanding. You know, he knew that I could get the car from point A to point B. He knew that he couldn't intimidate me. So, and to this day, you know, Roy is a good friend, and we get along pretty well.
Great stuff, man. Boy, the time flies by when we have somebody like you on the show, and we got to wrap this one up. Unfortunately, we'll end it on that. That's a great story, but want to say thanks for taking the time, man. Love you to death, brother. You and your wife, Lois Ann, who I know is right there beside you as well. And the relationships, you said it before, it's the relationships in this industry that linger on forever and ever, and that's what it's really all about. And you were one of the first guys that I was rubbing shoulders with when I was getting into my career as well. So want to say thanks for everything all along the way. And boy, it's been a real pleasure watching you go to work on the racetrack. You're incredible.
Thank you, Ken. I'm glad you stayed with it. And, it's a pleasure being on your show. I appreciate you guys having me on here. And looking forward to see you down the road somewhere. Maybe Indy. Who knows?